Well, hello and welcome back to the Eat the Chalk podcast, brought to you by the guys at the DFS headquarters, your one-stop shop for all things fantasy sports and getting the information you need to be competitive. It's a week-in, week-out thing. It's all the sports, MMA, golf, NASCAR, League of Legends, of course, the big ones, baseball coming to an end. The hockey season is over, so our hockey guy is getting a little bit of a break before he moves on to some other things, but obviously we are here to talk the NFL. It is week 4. You can follow us on the website now. Nick, what's going on? I saw you looking like.
We have an inflatable Chase ornament in our yard, and his head was moving like this. So I was like captivated because it looked like he was singing the Paw Patrol theme song that I had going on in my head.
I'm trying to do a read, and I'm like, what is he doing? So we are at dfsheadquarters.com and on Twitter at DFS headquarters is the Twitter site there. I am Bryan at HQ Golf Guy. He is Nick at Nick from CWE. Nick, we are at week 4 of the NFL season, and COVID-19 is finally upon us. This is a first look show. We record. We go live, actually. We're live right now on Wednesday afternoons. So, again, this is a first look show, our first look at the DFS slate. But, Nick, before we get into that, we've got to talk a little bit about some of the stuff going on in the world of the NFL. We have 2 games in question, 1 game already postponed in the Steelers and Titans due to COVID tests. The possibility of Minnesota and Houston also being postponed is still an option, not decided yet. And then we've got the Raiders going to a party with Darren Waller hosting, Derek Carr, a couple of other guys. No masks. The NFL very upset with them. We're here. We knew this was coming. What are your thoughts, Nick?
I mean, my thoughts are the same this week as they are every single week, Brian. It is Nick from CWE looking good today or what?
Yes.
All right.
I see a little bit of stubble, though. It's not as fresh.
Oh yeah. As I was getting off of one call that was off of one call that was off of one call, I touched my face and I was like, "Fuck! I haven't shaved in like a week." This is what not shaving in a week is like. There are some people who are extremely fortunate when they don't shave for like a week. They've got like big bushy beards. I could not shave for like 10 years and I would never end up with any more of this. So congratulations. But yeah, on the NFL side of things, I'm actually a little bit surprised that they canceled the game, to be honest with you, or that postponed the game. I haven't really paid enough attention to know if like there's talks. At some point I heard of a talk that it might be delayed until like Tuesday or something like that.
Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a loss for the slate, but as a whole, it's not a situation where it's going to really just jack stuff up. I mean, from an entertainment perspective, like I'm sure people are actually probably happy if this happened on Tuesday, if you're a football fan, because it gives you an extra day of watching football, because I'm sure NFL Network or whoever is going to find a way to make sure that it's on their platform. So, yeah, and as far as the Raiders go, stupid people are going to do stupid things. So it's, whatever happens, I'm sure we're going to find out about. It's going to be something we'll be able to manage and handle. But and I mean, I get it. I know people feel caged in, and there's a part of the population that feels like it isn't that big of a deal. And whatever. And of course, it's never a big deal for anybody until it hits home, right? It's always just a minor thing until it lands at your fucking doorstep. We don't have too many empaths out there who care about other people other than themselves. But yeah, going to be interesting to see how the NFL handles that. If we're going to see, Derek Carr is already not good, so it's not like it's a huge step down to whoever is going to replace him. But yeah, we'll see. I'm excited for this week. Last week was just last week is one of those weeks that I was really disappointed in myself for a number of reasons. Number one, and I do this from time to time, it's like I hear people who I assume are smarter than me at football say something, and it gets me away from like what I want to do. So late last week, I ended up gravitating toward Kenyon Drake, who I haven't really played at all this year because he's been awful. And I just heard smart people talking about, Kenyon Drake in a high-scoring game, and it pushed me off of it. And you're going to crack up everyone's going to maybe not crack up, but like I was going to play Mike Davis. I went on the podcast last week and I up and down said that I didn't like Mike Davis. And as the week went on and Devin Singletary became the new chalky play, I saw that Mike Davis was going to be, you know, a lower, or like I saw sites having him come in at like 7%. And I was like, that's not right. Like at 25%, I didn't want Mike Davis, but at 7%, I want Mike Davis. So it helped me in tournaments because I did pivot a lot there. And then I got bit by the Deontay Johnson injury, and that really basically crushed me in cash games because I did go with Russ over Kyler Murray. Apparently, I am one of like 20% of people who saw that was clearly the much better play, because Kyler Murray, and especially in like super high stakes stuff, was like 82% owned. And he was cheaper, but it's hard to look at. And it was another thing where I know people were like doing a lot of, I saw a ton of like Kyler Murray, Kenyon Drake stacks. Like I get it for tournaments, but cash games, right. I think, and it's a little naive to say, well, you get all the touchdowns. Well, okay, if they score 3 touchdowns, that fucking helps nobody unless one of them is to each other and they're doing this. And that's not how it went at all. And Kyler Murray was a bust in relative to other players, and Kenyon Drake continues to just be fucking terrible.
And I mean, while he got the most of the touches, he didn't start the game either. Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, wow. I remember I'm looking at the Yahoo Statcaster, and I'm like, I was already mad because like Deontay Johnson got hurt. CeeDee Lamb got hurt. That's the other guy that I played, and I got to watch 2 illustrious Cedric Wilson touchdowns. Do you know who Cedric Wilson is? He's the wide receiver from Boise State who I don't think played a snap this year. So that was fun. But yeah, I was already tilted, and then I see the first 2 carries. Do you give me water? Yes. I saw that the first 2 – not you, Brian. I was talking to my beautiful wife. But, yeah, I see Chase Edmonds get the first 2 handoffs, and I was like, yeah, this isn't going to get any worse. So, but, like, look, we have those weeks. You have to learn and move on from them. And like I said at the beginning of the year, one thing I did in NASCAR is I have a little like mantra sheet. That's the first thing that I look at when I open up my projection sheet, which I don't use as projections, more of like a guide. But like I look at it and I definitely put in there to remember, like, don't fall victim to groupthink. Just because somebody like jumps in and they feel like, well, you know, everything lines up for Kenyon Drake. If you don't think it makes sense, if you don't like the play, you're going to find out 100 times out of 100, it feels better to play with your gut and lose than to play with someone else's gut and lose. And the guy that you had originally ends up, you know, kind of being the nuts. So, yeah, that's it.
And one of the things that we talk about throughout the week after this show is we'll talk about this show in the Discord and in our chat sessions, but we'll also talk about the things like you mentioned, the percentages of knowing Singletary was going to be the chalk and Davis not being the chalk. Those are the sort of things that while you can get great information from this show, it's a first look show. So we want you, to obviously understand that this isn't the end all be all of what's going to happen this week. We do talk about that stuff in the Discord and in our chats. No major injuries really to speak of. Tariq Cohen is out for the year with an injury there. So some people are talking about Cordero Patterson. Artavis Pierce has been re-signed by Chicago. So we'll see how that works out. We believe McKinnon should be okay. Reed is constantly hurt. Djax is constantly hurt. Dontrell Inman had 2 touchdowns, then and a wrist injury, so we'll see about that. John Brown likely not to play. Chris Carson likely not to play, and neither is Chris Godwin. So those are the injuries. Nick, you want to get into week 4 here? There's only 3 4 o'clock games, so I know you're disappointed.
Oh yeah, I'm a little disappointed. I mean, I don't know. I like having a larger slate in the afternoon because it gives you more variety. I didn't know about the John Brown thing. That's really interesting. It's kind of going to play onto a couple of things. One thing we talked about last week that I think is going to be a bigger thing this week, and then someone who I really liked in cash games, and people would probably say he's not really a safe play in cash games, but I think he is. So let's kick it off and let's start talking fucking football.
Let's do it. So the opening game is one that could draw some eyes just because of the offensive potential of the New Orleans Saints at Detroit. The Lions, Lions are the Lions, but there's offense to be had if you want it. Drew Brees, the shell of Drew Brees, is at 5,800. Matt Stafford is at 59. Kamara is up to 8,000 this week. Latavius Murray's at 49. AP at 47. DeAndre Swift at 43. Michael Thomas, we'll see. I don't see that happening. He's at 76. Emmanuel Sanders is at 48. Galladay is at 6. Marvin Jones at 49. Hawkinson at 48. Jared Cook, also some questions about Jared Cook. And his health, he's at 54. Am I wrong in thinking this game may be higher scoring? Because what we've seen maybe says it might not be.
Yeah, I genuinely don't like looking at New Orleans outside of the dome, but I think Detroit is also a dome.
It is.
So, and with there being like no home field advantage really at this point, I don't think that – I don't know. I saw this game and I just felt icky about it. You know, there's too many question marks. Like Alvin Kamara, if Michael Thomas doesn't play, I mean, I think you just continue to just play him. Why wouldn't you? Like
in both cash in tournaments?
Yeah, because I know he's expensive, but you're probably looking at, if I had to guess, I would say probably a 15-point floor just in receiving with Michael Thomas out. I don't think you're necessarily guaranteed touchdowns. I don't think you're guaranteed like 10 for 80, but like 10 for 50 feels comfortable. So like I feel like he's got a 20-point floor is what I'm saying.
The one thing I'd be worried about is with Thomas out and Cook questionable is scheming to stop Kamara, but then I realize Matt Patricia is not Bill Belichick.
Yeah, Matt Patricia is not a good football coach. I don't think. And scheming to take someone out and being able to do it are two different things. And even if Michael Thomas is back here, to me, his price feels cheap. I wouldn't fault anyone for going there.
It's your own rule, though. Your own rule of if there's a guy at 76 that's healthy, I want that guy over a guy who's 76, right?
Or you mean 82 with Kamara?
Well, Thomas. I mean, if you play a similar receiver in that price range, right?
Yeah, I think so. I've heard some buzz with people just because, like we probably assume that Michael Thomas is a target monster because we've seen it. The first game didn't make me feel good because he was not a target monster. You can't look at that and rest your laurels on that. Well, that's how every game is going to go. The price feels cheap. I don't know. And Drew Brees looks fucking terrible. I mean, he's just a dump off king at this point. I don't know. I don't think I have interest in Brees. I have interest in Kamara if we don't have Thomas. Maybe I have interest in Thomas if we have Thomas. But if Thomas plays, I'll have some interest in Thomas. If Thomas doesn't, I'll have a lot of interest in Kamara, and that's probably how I would handle that side of the football.
On the flip side, when you take a look at, I want to go with wide receivers here. Galladay back, made a bit of an impact last week. But again, I look at those running backs, and I don't understand what Detroit is doing with Adrian Peterson. It doesn't make any sense to me. I want to see what these other guys have. They've spent second-round picks on Johnson and Swift. But you can argue with the results of what Peterson's bringing and what the other guys aren't. So, I mean, it's a competition, but I just don't see the Lions being that team that's going to run away and be a real Super Bowl contender. So, on the flip side, what do you think?
I don't like this game. I really don't. Like you said, I'm not playing Matt Stafford. He looks like the Matt Stafford we had in like 2018 where he just put up 17 fantasy points every week. And he didn't really have spike games. And this doesn't really strike me as being a spike game for him, right? That I think that Saints defense is good. I don't like playing a team. I don't like playing whack-a-mole at running back. So I'm not playing any of these guys. So then the receivers. I think the receivers are interesting. I think in general, whoever Marshawn Lattimore is going to be on, as we saw with Marquez Valdez-Scantling, they just disappear from the game. And it allows the wide receiver to to really ball out, which is we saw Alan Lazard do it. And this is nothing new. This is not a 1-game sample size. This is something we've known since Lattimore's really come into his own, is that he shuts down a team's top option. And here I am assuming that top option is going to be Kenny Golladay, which if that's the case, as bad as I feel like he's been this year, it does put me somewhat interested on a $4,900 Marvin Jones. And look, we know that in any given year, Marvin Jones has like 1 or 2 just breaks the tits off of the slate performances where he has like 160 yards and 3 touchdowns. And from a statistical basis, this would look like a week that could be possible. So I don't know if I haven't really tried to build too much, which I'm actually really thankful for, because so often I fall in love early on in the week and it really stops me from changing my cash lineup too much. So I'm just waiting until the weekend, until all the news is in. But there's an intrigue there. I mean, 4,900 is a low price point, and I get that he hasn't really been like super good, and the Detroit as a whole hasn't really looked great. But if Golladay does get shut down, that's who I would assume is getting the production. I would take some shots at Hawkinson, but I don't know. I feel much more comfortable with Marvin Jones, specifically in tournaments.
The Indianapolis Colts and the Chicago Bears are a 1:00 kick in Chicago. Phillip Rivers is at 5,500. The new quarterback in Chicago, Nick Foles, is at 5,700. Trubisky, for some reason, now 53. If there's some crazy person that wants to play a showdown slate or something, if there's one that's available. Jonathan Taylor at 66. Nyheim Hines at 47. On the flip side, David Montgomery's at 55. Ryan Nall is at 42, and Artavius Pierce does not have a price yet. I'm sure he will by the end of the week here. The receivers in Indy, Pittman went down. He's going to be out for a little while. That's after Paris Campbell went down. So they are now down to T.Y. Hilton at 53 and Zach Pascal at 44. Reese Fountain is at 3,000. Allen Robinson is at 67. Anthony Miller at 49 is interesting with to me at least, with Nick Foles in at quarterback. Darnell Mooney at 3,000 at tight end. Mo Alley Cox is at 39. And Jimmy Graham, Jimmy Graham of 10 years ago is at 38. Before we get into the real breakdown, I want to figure out week 1, we saw Nyheim Hines just not planned, run away with points. Week 2, we saw the Colts had some time to think about how they wanted to run it. Jonathan Taylor dominated those touches. This past week, again, against the Jets, which game script didn't really favor Nyheim Hines at all, the touches were 14-11. What's going on in Indy's backfield?
Well, it's pretty clear, and I don't think you're going to see too many. I don't think you're going to see too many instances where they come out with like that much of a lead that it strips Jonathan Taylor of an entire quarter and a half of production. But man, there were definitely some things that I saw in Jonathan Taylor that I did not like. Jonathan Taylor oftentimes looked like Trent Richardson, where there would be a gaping hole right here, and he was just like, let me run right into the back of the lineman. And that shit is scary because, look, Trent Richardson had a decent rookie year in Cleveland, and they were really quick to get rid of him because he just lacked field vision. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, like I said, it was extraordinarily concerning, especially as someone who played him in cash, and it didn't work out. Point blank, it was a very, very, very bad day. The matchup here is probably neutral. I don't hate, but like, to me, it's a situation where I'm not that interested. I'm really, again, it sucks that we started off this way, but I'm just really not interested in this game much to begin mm-hmm. with. The Colts have a good defense. Nick Foles, yay, he looked okay against, I don't even remember, Minnesota. Yay, you looked good against, is that who they played last week? I forget who they played last week.
He looked okay, but Nick Foles always looks okay.
And it was Atlanta. They played Atlanta. Yeah, it was the Falcons. You looked good against Atlanta. Congratulations.
He's not a long-term quarterback. He's a backup.
Yeah, so you start looking at some of these pieces. I do think David Montgomery is going to carry interest for me every week in tournaments because I do believe the skill set is there. I do believe they will use like Cordero Patterson a little bit, but I think that it does open up the opportunity for Montgomery to catch more balls. And I do like he's someone that nobody is going to play, especially this week.
You would know more. You would know more than anyone, though. At Oregon State, Artavis Pierce was a 3-down back. He's a guy that they did cut, not thinking that Cohen was going to get hurt.
Sure,
I could see him having some sort of a role in kind of making Cordero Patterson pointless.
Yeah, I'm definitely not advocating for playing Cordero Patterson.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah, right.
I liked Artavis Pierce. It was kind of interesting. Jamar Jefferson really bursted onto the scene at Oregon State in 2018. And I think a lot of the expectation was for him to really have a monster year in 2019. But I think Pierce was injured a lot of 2018. And then Jefferson dealt with some injuries in 2019. But when both were healthy, like it was – more often than not, it felt like Artavis Pierce was the one who looked a lot more complete. And granted, it could be because he was further along in his collegiate career and more refined. That could definitely be part of it. I just, those situations, sure, if there's a showdown slate, like you could possibly look at that. But like in general, what do I want to do? Do I want to try to guess if T.Y. Hilton's going to be good this week?
No, not at all.
I think there is some. I do think there's some intrigue in Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller, especially at Anthony Miller's price. I think that Robinson should continue to be a volume hog because he's clearly the most talented receiver on the team. We know Anthony Miller has big play upside, and game script should certainly favor them here because they should be trailing. So I don't hate it, but it's just I'm not going out of my way to get any of these pieces in my lineups.
You buying Mo Alley Cox?
I'm selling Jack Doyle. I don't know how much I'm buying. I don't know how much it is that I'm buying Cox, but it's definitely he definitely looks like the best of the options out there right now. But I just don't think you have to this week.
Jimmy Graham at 38.
He's fine. I mean, look, he's one of the top scoring tight ends, if not like the top scoring tight end right now. And I think a lot of it is because of touchdown production. I think he has 2 games of 2 touchdowns, which in 3 weeks is certainly going to slant things in your favor. But one thing I've learned is you don't play the fucking game of touchdown variance is going to hit him eventually, because if it doesn't, then you just lose money on not playing Jimmy Graham. So if he's going to get looks in the red zone, especially at that price, Lord have mercy. Like, let's run him in some tournaments. Do I think he's the greatest cash option? I'd have to look into it, honestly. I just kind of wrote this game off, but it could be 3,800. He's going to see 5 or 6 targets, and maybe with Tariq Cohen out, he sees some of those short range targets, and that props his floor up a little bit more. So it could be viable.
The Arizona Cardinals take the road into Carolina to take on the Panthers. A 1:00 kick. Kyler Murray has officially reached the $7K price tag. Teddy Bridgewater's at 56. Kenyon Drake is at 6. Chase Edmonds at 42. Mike Davis is at 57. If you want Christian McCaffrey, he's only 8,800. So, what a bargain that is. DeAndre Hopkins all the way up to 8,500 now. Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald at 44. Isabella with a touchdown last week at 45. 2 touchdowns last week, maybe. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. DJ Moore at 56. He's still going to be an important part of that offense. Robbie Anderson at 54. Curtis Samuel at 48. Ian Thomas is at 3,000. I'm not going to talk about Arizona's tight ends. They don't matter. The price is getting up there for our boys Murray and Hopkins.
Yeah, and look, there are going to be every week options because, Murray can run, and even against good defenses, like, it's hard to stop what he brings to the table. It just really is. So he's someone I'm going to play in tournaments every week. I don't think he's on my radar for cash games this week at all. I'm probably spending down a little bit. Hopkins, yeah, he's up there, but I feel like there's no one that provides a safer floor right now. Mm-hmm. But man, you're really spending up, and there's no really, really cheap quarterback. And I don't think there's any like super cheap, definitely reliable receiver options either. I think everything carries a lot of risk, as you would expect it to, as the NFL season progresses and pricing becomes more efficient. I really like Mike Davis, man. like for me, it wasn't, I think Mike Davis is garbage. And I think it was more of like, look, we saw him catch 8 passes. Before I make investments in my cash game specifically on a role that I have no idea about, I want to see it in action first. Like Devin Singletary, we knew Devin Singletary. We've seen him in Buffalo for an entire year. Mm-hmm. We saw what Mike Davis is. In my opinion, Mike Davis has probably like a 10-point floor just in receiving. I don't think he has any floor in terms of rushing. 20 yards, 25 yards? So like a 13-point floor at 5'7". Yeah. I mean, to me, it's sure. And I don't hear people talking about him.
Well, I mean, Trenton Cannon is at 4,000. No carries. Bonifant is not even listed, and he was the backup running back.
I think he did get some carries, but they obviously weren't good. So
two carries for 16 yards.
Teddy Bridgewater continues to be a low ADOT passer. Like, I'm going to play Mike Davis in my cash games this week at 5,700, knowing that he'll probably get hurt or score or only have 4 catches for 15 yards, because that's just how luck works for me the week after I try to get on someone. But the play in itself makes sense. They're going, again, should be trailing. On the flip side, look, this is what I'm going to say. I'm playing Kenyon Drake this week. I do not feel good about it. Kenyon Drake it doesn't look like he is getting the opportunity I want to see. Chase Edmonds is definitely involved. And we constantly talk about, Josh Allen in Buffalo and how he's the goal line back. But I almost feel like we could say the same for Kyler Murray, but his range is much further. So if they're 15 yards out and he's running the ball, high potential that's converting into a touchdown. So I'm playing Drake specifically because Carolina has been dog shit against running backs. And it's like 14 or 15 straight games that they've allowed a running back to score a touchdown. Drake is priced at $6K on DraftKings. Like, this is the perfect situation because here I'm going to lay out the next 2 weeks of strategy for you. Number one, if you play Drake at $6K and he does what most running backs do, we saw what Austin Eckler did last week against Carolina. We've seen it for 14 or 15 games. If Drake goes out there, I think his floor is probably like 18 points here. I think that's fine for $6K. If he doesn't do well, your buy low opportunity on him is going to be super, super huge because I do feel like he's talented. I feel like eventually they'll incorporate him more, and you'll have a perfect opportunity in week 5 to play a 2% owned Drake because everyone is pissed that he fucking screwed them the week before. I think, DJ Morris still continues to be an air yards king. Mm-hmm. Eventually he's going to pop off. Robbie Anderson's a big play waiting to happen. Christian Kirk doesn't play. There's some intrigue in Andy Isabella, but he's not going to score touchdowns on 50% of his receptions. But he's talented, and there was never this is a kid who, when UMass, I think they played Alabama or someone with like a really good defense, had like 14 catches for 228 yards and a couple of scores. I remember that because it was just I'm not playing Andy Isabella in DFS against this stud defense. And anyone who knows like college football, Massachusetts is dog shit. They're one of the worst. They're like the worst defensive team in their offense. But Andy Isabella just lit it up. And so I think the talent's there. But 4 catches on 4 targets and 2 touchdowns is the most efficient lineup you're basically ever going to post.
The Baltimore-Washington rivalry is all set for this week, 1 o'clock. The Ravens and the Washington football team, 1 o'clock kickoff. The Ravens, we'll go through the pricing here really quick. Lamar Jackson is at 81, Mark Ingram 57, J.K. Dobbins is at 4,800, Marquise Brown is at 63, Willie Snead at 4,000, Boykin is at 4,000, Mark Andrews is at 6,000. On the flip side, we've got Haskins at 5,000, Antonio Gibson at 45, McLaurin at 58, Steven Sims at 34, Inman again, we're not sure about his health at 37, Logan Thomas at 35. The Ravens are not what we thought the Ravens would be offensively, and I don't understand how Mark Ingram went from the start he had last year to the start he's had this year. Is this the week we start to see J.K. Dobbins a little more?
So that's actually really interesting because one of my like bold prediction takes is that I think J.K. Dobbins is probably going to be like my top tournament play at the position this week. Not because necessarily of anything wrong with Mark Ingram, but just because of how good J.K. Dobbins is. And I do think this is extremely soft competition. Mm-hmm. You know, we just watched Nick Chubb just demolish these guys. And Kareem Hunt got involved in the action too. So I can definitely see a scenario here where you see 2 touchdowns, but you also see a lot of production that goes along with it. And eventually it's in John Harbaugh's or whatever Harbaugh's coaching the Ravens. The other one is at that loser Michigan school.
All right, the show was fun, guys. We're going to find a new co-host and
yeah. Trump last night in his speech said that people in Ohio, and I'm in Ohio, people in Ohio should be excited because the college football season, the Big Ten is going to be playing college football. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, why should the people in Ohio be happy? Ohio State isn't winning anything. They don't win things. They beat Michigan. Like that's your big accomplishment.
I'd take a win in that game at
this point. Anyway, yeah. I don't know. This is an absolute get right spot for Baltimore. I think this makes sense. Go ahead.
No, do you think there's a situation where both Ingram and Dobbins could have those kind of games?
Yeah, I mean, I think 2 of the 3 of Jackson, Ingram, Dobbins could have big games, right? And I'm kind of tying my cart to Jackson, and because I think he's the one they really need to push, right? Mm-hmm. Looks totally inaccurate, and again, you know, it all goes in. It's a whole thing, right? Like they were running the ball relatively well on that first drive, kicked a field goal, and then they were like, all right, that worked. Let's not do that the rest of the game. Let's just try to throw the ball as much as we could. Just like, I don't understand what happens with coaches. As soon as like they feel out of their comfort zone, they just start to call things erratically. And look, I could be dead wrong, but I just am telling you what I saw with my eyes. I think they worked this game. It would not surprise me if they really, really like try to pour on the points just to try to raise everybody's confidence. Because again, you can't be feeling good when you are a favorite in the conference and the team that you have to go through just adopts all 54 of your players as his children, like Patrick Mahomes did to the entire Ravens team.
Yeah, how good is Andy Reid right now?
I mean, he's clicking on another level. That team is just something else. So what do I want to do here? Well, I mean, in truth, like I do want some exposure to Lamar Jackson because believe it or not, I think people will actually probably be down on him. Not so much from the perspective of, thinking that what we saw Monday night is what Lamar Jackson is, but just because he's priced high, it's not as easy. You know, we don't have any right now 4K running backs to just plug in. There's not a lot of it doesn't feel like a lot of great value, so it kind of feels like harder to spend up a quarterback. And I think those are great opportunities to buy into someone like Marquise Brown, who just hasn't delivered this year. Mark Andrews, yeah, he had a good game at Cleveland, but he has not looked very good at all outside of that.
How do you stack this game in a tournament?
Oh, Terry McLaurin, that's the only playable piece.
Well, on the Ravens side, what do you do? I mean, if you let Ingram and Dobbins,
it's really the tough part. Like, I don't see myself having a ton. I will probably not play Ingram in Baltimore stacks. I will probably do my stacks with like Jackson, Dobbins, Brown, and Andrews, and I might only play like one of those people with him. Like I like to do the 1-2-1, but it just might be 1-1-1. It might be because again, Lamar Jackson, if he rushes in 3 touchdowns, like, and you stack Andrews and Marquise Brown with him, like you're done. It's over. One of those guys didn't get off. And we have to remember, like, it doesn't work. A stack doesn't work if a guy catches a touchdown and his line is like 440 and a touch. Your lineup is dead. It's not moving on. It's no longer. So like when we're stacking these, we need to be stacking from the expectation that like the people we're putting in there can do what DK Metcalf, who what a fucking bonehead that guy is, and Lockett did last week. Like, we're not looking for that extreme ceiling like we got out of Lockett, but you're looking for two guys who are going to, with your quarterback, end up with like 75 points to 85 points combined. And that's like that's a stack that takes down a tournament.
We talked about Dwayne Haskins possibly losing that job. It's been pretty widely speculated that the leash is short Kyle Allen. But I want to talk about Antonio Gibson is the guy I want to talk about. And is the Baltimore defense going to be up for this one? Is he a sneaky play, or really is it just McLaurin?
Yeah, I really think that the Baltimore defense is really going to try to like not be embarrassed. There's going to be nothing more embarrassing for them if Washington keeps this game close, because Washington has not been able to keep most games close. Maybe they have, but it's like, I don't know. And Ron Rivera's, I understand the dude's going through a lot, but you call it quits. I've seen now in consecutive games with them trailing that there will be a minute and a half left and he's just handing the ball off. No, you can't win, but your quarterback has no confidence. Why aren't you out there? I know you could, in theory, get someone hurt, but why aren't you out there trying to like end the game on a positive note? Maybe he hits McLaurin for a deep touchdown and he's coming into the next week like, okay, something was clicking as that game went on, and I feel it this week, and that gets him out of the rut. But no, Ron Rivera's just like, fuck it, run the ball, let's just wind the clock down, I'm out. It feels like he's very disingenuous as a coach if that's how you're approaching things.
It doesn't make any sense, because if that's the case, just go to Allen. Just go to Allen. What do you?
Yes, take him out of the game. But it's so to me, it's been embarrassing on all levels. If I was the owner, and I know that the person who owns the Washington Redskins doesn't appear to be a good human being or a smart person, but I would be moving on from Ron Rivera. Again, I understand the guy has cancer. Like, I lost my mom to cancer, so, like, when I was super young. Like, so I get it, but like, your performance is the thing that matters on the football field. It's not everything that's going on behind the scenes, and you need to do better. You need to try better. If you're a player and your coach isn't trying to give that 100% to the end of the game, how could you be expected to? So I like Gibson. I think Gibson is going to continue to develop, but I just don't see this as being a chance for like a massive game. I do for McLaurin. Again, like, this could be a McLaurin 7-10 catch 115-yard game, and at that point you don't need a touchdown. It would just be icing on the cake.
Of course, we talked about Pittsburgh and Tennessee, that game possibly being moved to Monday, maybe Tuesday as well. So we'll skip over that and we'll head out to South Florida, the Chargers and the Bucks. I'm going through the list and I'm like,
what if I told you I have no interest in this? I mean, I feel like we've I feel like we've talked most of these games. It just feels like there's two good defenses here. I'm certainly not playing either quarterback. I'm not. Where are the Leonard Fournette truthers at this week? He was he was worse than Ronald Jones, who was absolutely terrible. I'm not playing. I don't really want to play the guess and check between Eckler and Jonathan Taylor, but really neither profiles well in this game. So, you don't have to. So I guess like,
well, you've got Williams. Williams is hurt, possibly not playing. Godwin hurt, possibly not playing, and it makes it. I saw that. Yeah, Godwin's expected to miss. So okay, I would have some interest in Mike Evans. I know it's a good Chargers defense, but I think this is a case where like volume could trump all, and I could see him getting 10 and 12 targets, which. This is a game that I think it's likelier to stay close than not. I don't see the Chargers have enough pieces that they can like make the game interesting. So I don't think it's just like a write-off, but like it's still nothing's like terribly compelling. I don't want to, if anything, I'm really looking at like Hunter Henry at 4,600 feels like that's a little bit too cheap. Yes, all we've really seen him do is like 5 for 50 pretty much continuously. But one of these games, he's going to have a 2-touchdown game.
And 4,600 is not a bad price for someone of his, his talent level. So for me, I'm taking minimal pieces, and these are two defenses that I will keep in the player pool because I think that, you could see one of them have a double-digit performance.
Just because I feel an obligation. Tyrod Taylor at 57, Brady at 61, Ronald Jones at 47, Eckler's at 71, Evans is at 64, Keenan Allen on the flip side is at 65. Knowing Chris Godwin is going to be injured and maybe not playing, does that open up anything in your thoughts for Justin Watson at 3,400?
Yeah, I see that Scotty Miller has the Q next to his name too. So, I mean, Justin Watson, preseason hero. I mean, if that's your hustle, like, go with Justin Watson. I just to me, and look, we could be totally wrong, but I don't feel like either of these offenses are like high octane offenses to begin with, and now you put them up against good defenses. What really is the expectation here? I'm just failing to see like why in a game like this you're trying to find value when there's probably not going to be a ton of points scored.
Fair enough. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 more 1 o'clock games. I'm not sure why. We got to get some more 4 o'clock games, right?
Yeah.
Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks are going to another tremendous pass defense in the Minnesota Vikings. Wow.
No, they're not.
That's what I was getting at. Russell Wilson at 78. Ryan Fitzpatrick is at 54 for I'm Minnesota. I'm at Miami.
Yeah, it was the
I
Dolphins.
can't even read. Good God.
It doesn't matter.
He can throw on them all, so it doesn't matter. Where I'm like, Ryan Fitzpatrick, that doesn't make sense. Because MIA is Miami, you moron. Chris Carson at 63. Likely not to play. Carlos Hyde at 53. Travis Homer at 4. And DJ Dallas also at 4. Myles Gaskin is going to be at 5,000 with Matt Breida at 4. And someone tried to convince me. I was reading some article. Jordan Howard's a keeper. Just hold on to Jordan Howard. Hold on to Jordan Howard. Let him get an opportunity. He's going to make a rebound. He's at 4,100, so I'll just say it because I don't know that. Tyler Lockett at 7. DK Metcalf at 68. Devontae Parker at 57. Preston Williams, interesting to me, at 45. Then you've got Gesicki at 51 and Greg Olsen at 41. Do you kind of like Preston Williams this week a little bit on the flip side of what could be a high-scoring Seattle offense?
Not quite, and I'm a little bit disappointed because coming into this year, like I was full-on hype train Preston Williams. I thought the talent was unquestionably there, but it doesn't seem like he's as involved as you would really want him to be. Sure, he caught a touchdown in the game last week, but it might have been his only catch. And granted, we did have some really bizarre like stat lines in that game. I think Mike Gesicki did the same thing, like 1 catch, minimal yardage, and a touchdown. The Chris Carson injury is super interesting to me because, like, you would think this could be the game. They're like, all right, let's run the ball. Like, we should be able to kind of get this thing to like 14-17 relatively easily. I don't think anybody has like a lot of faith in the Miami Dolphins offense in general. So, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is this just another game where we see Russell Wilson throw for 300 yards and 5 touchdowns. And if it is, I'm going to tell you right now, if like that's what we really think, like it's a no questions asked, just play him. Like, I don't know if you can math. I can math a little bit, but like that's like 33 points with upside of like 40. And like, let's not write off a situation that Miami can't keep this a little bit interesting, right? Sure. Like, we've seen Ryan Fitzpatrick just have these out of nowhere performances where he's just on fire and goes 400 and 3 touchdowns and carries another in. So for tournaments, I don't mind having exposure to. I think my approach in general, I'm going to play both quarterbacks in tournaments. It's entirely possible, depending on how things swing. Right now, I don't see a build that I like that really puts Russell Wilson into my cash games. I don't think I have any interest in the running games, but then I'm looking at both passing games and I'm like, okay, I could get behind Gesicki. I could get behind Devontae Parker, who I really wanted to argue was not going to be the number one, very clearly the number one receiver in Miami. And I don't think it's even like, it's not even close. 5,700 feels like a reasonable price. That team just continues to lose players. You know, on the Seattle side, just being honest, I'm only ever going to play Metcalf and Lockett unless it's a showdown slate. I don't feel compelled to like try to throw in Greg Olsen and David Moore, but sticking behind what seemed to work last week, I will just take the cheaper of the two and play DK Metcalf more than I play Tyler Lockett. And maybe that'll be a thing. Whoever's the lowest price receiver for the Seahawks just catches 3 touchdowns that week. So there is, you know, you can see paths to players. Like I could see a path to where DK Metcalf has 140 yards and 2 touchdowns on 4 catches. I could see that. That's a pretty clear path.
Are there too many options in that backfield right now for you to consider any of them?
Yeah, I mean, what's it going to be? If Carson is out, it's going to be Hyde, but it's also going to be some Travis Homer and maybe even some DJ Dallas. So, like, I think that could be a role that is less filled by one person and more filled by just a committee. And then on the Miami side, look, you know, Myles Gaskin's coming out once they're in the 5-yard line. So, you know, Jordan Howard, if you're in a touchdown-only league or something like that, great. Keep Jordan Howard because he very well might score 14 touchdowns this year. His stat line will be 17 carries, 18 yards, and 14 touchdowns. It'll be the most erratic stat line in the history of the NFL. It'll be like very LeGarrette Blount-ish without actually having talent.
Like I remember watching Jordan Howard in Indiana.
In Indiana, yeah.
And he was fast. He was good.
Yeah.
What happened?
And the funny thing is, I mean, Jordan Howard came from UAB, and he was like, and now Spencer Brown is at UAB, and he is fucking really good. But the point is, like, UAB's program closed. He ends up being like, you know, transferring to Indiana and is just an absolute stud. And like, we in the DFS college football community, like, it was never a question. Like, we knew it was going to happen. And, you know, look, we've seen so many times guys not be able to take the transition from the collegiate level to the professional level. And, you know, that's kind of what you got to chalk it up as, I guess.
All right, let's move on. I like this game. Now tell me why I'm an idiot. Jacksonville at Cincinnati, 1 o'clock in Cincy. You got Gardner Minshew at 59, Joe Burrow at 63, James Robinson at 65, Mixon at 58, Bernard at 44. Bernard sneakily has like 4 or 5 catches a game, and no one knows it. A.J. Green at 55, Tyler Boyd at 61, and T. Higgins is at 45. DJ Chark at 6, Keelan Cole at 45. Laviska, your boys at 44, Eifert at 35, Drew Sample, who just fell flat last week at 35. Am I nuts? Because I like this game.
So, in general, I don't think you're nuts, right? But here's the problem that really kind of keeps me from being like, yes, let's go full steam ahead. You already talked about the issues with Gio Bernard and Joe Mixon. If Cincy trails, Joe Mixon is a 2-down back, and that's it. Right? Despite the fact that Joe Mixon made all of his money at Oklahoma catching fucking passes. Just, I don't understand what's going on. And then on the flip side, you have a similar situation in Jacksonville where if Jacksonville falls behind, James Robinson might be a 1-down back, and then Chris Thompson. Now, granted, look, these things don't matter until like the middle of the third quarter, where one of these teams is inevitably going to try to be catching up, right? Or tied, they're tied, whatever. You know, a tie game is pretty much like a losing game. You're not going to keep your running back who runs the ball on the field. You're more likely to keep your running back that catches the ball. So for that reason, it's super tough for me to look at this and be like, oh yeah, I want to play now more expensive than Joe Mixon, James Robinson. And look, rightfully so. You don't get priced based on talent. You get priced based off of your production. And the kid's looked super good. Props to him. He's looked very good thus far in the short time this season. Okay, so maybe we don't play any running backs. I don't always love attaching running backs to quarterbacks anyway. So let's look at the receiving options. And like you said, wow, Drew Sample, again, because I had a little more salary, I thankfully ended up getting off of him and moving to Logan Thomas, which it didn't matter. It was still a terrible play. He had like 7 for 70, or I'm sorry, he had 7.1 fantasy points. It was just a disaster. All tight ends are disasters right now. Well, except for Jimmy Graham. But anyway, that's a different discussion.
Well, welcome to 2012.
Let's play their pass catchers. I'm quite convinced that they have an 8-receiver rotation going on in Cincinnati. I mean,
in Jacksonville as well.
And Jacksonville as well. So it's like, your mind tells you I'll play DJ Chark, but I don't even think he's been the top guy in terms of volume and target when he's been on the field, and he hasn't been on the field enough. So like Keelan Cole, I think there was someone posted last week, someone who's like statty. I don't have time to like post stats for myself. But like I think they said Cole had run more routes than Chark. And it just gets to be this point where like, okay, so what if it's what if it's Mike Thomas 2-touchdown week? Or it's Tyler Boyd and you play T. Higgins, or it's AJ Green. It just feels like there's a ton of mouths to feed. And in playing fantasy, like, you want concentrated volume, right? You want things that you can bank on. That's why we love Seattle right now, because it's very unlikely that David Moore is going 820 and a touchdown.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
In golf, there's a theory that some people play. If they play 20 lineups, they'll play what they call the cascade method. So they'll play 5 guys in 10 lineups and mix up the last guy. And then they'll play 4 of those guys in the other 5 lineups, and then 3 of them in the final 5 lineups, and just kind of cascade. Is there any thought that you could do that in the NFL if you're doing like a 20-line thing that would allow you to get a piece of all of these guys, knowing you may not win one, but you're giving yourself a chance somewhere along the line? Or is that too risky in the NFL?
I mean, that's a very loaded question that I'd need to sit down and like try to look at. But in general, let's just say that you are trying to do what I always talk about, where you do quarterback, two receiving options, and 1 from the other team. Mm-hmm. Well, if you put a pool of like 7 players that could possibly be viable, and look, it's probably not. It's really probably Higgins, AJ Green, or Tyler Boyd. Those are going to be the guys who are your most likely volume winners. I think you can, but it is all in the aggregate. Like, so what is your sacrifice for cascading that and playing like 2 of those guys on one lineup and then, running all kinds of different combinations.
Right.
At some point you end up, and this is something I've like, my player pools end up being way too big. Mm-hmm. I know this. After last week, that was the first thing that I saw. I'm building 190 to 210 unique lineups in an optimizer, but I have so many guys that I'm just going 5%, 5%, 5%. Well, like, you're wasting those percents, because effectively what you're saying is just in case,
right?
This guy, well, okay, you're playing him at 5%. Do you know how lucky you have to be to get that guy at 5% in the right lineup?
And if you want to play just in case, just play cash.
And I do play cash, and apparently I play just in case. Although, I mean, I even still had like a 50% cash rate in head-to-head. Not in my cash games, still had like a 50%. That has been the biggest thing that has helped me this year. But in general, like, I think you just need to take stands. If you think this game is going to go off, if you're only playing a few lineups, like, you just have to make a choice. You don't have enough equity to be able to say, well, I'll play him in this and these 2 in that. Like, if you're doing multi-entry, it's so much easier, because you could say, I want to play 10% of this guy in overall, and then you know you're going to have some of them tied to you. So you could build groups that could really leverage how you have combinations that could potentially work. So I don't know. I don't dislike this game.
It's fine. There's a reason why I do golf and UFC. It's because I don't do it.
Well, but still, like, it's better than some of. It's better. I would rather try to play some of these options than potentially going with like the Chargers in Tampa Bay, for example.
The Cleveland Browns go to Dallas, 1:00 again. Baker Mayfield at 58, Dak at 72, Zeke's at 78, Nick Chubb at 7, Kareem Hunt at 62, Odell at 58, Jarvis at 51, Coop at 67, and Michael Gallup is at 62. Dalton Schultz at 43, Austin Hooper at 4, Zeke at 78. Is he being used right? It just feels like he's not.
Well, I think that, and like my big take, it was that I completely faded Zeke last week. I just game script. And look, Zeke is somewhat game script independent, but I viewed it as being a situation where Dallas was just going to have to throw the ball, and I actually didn't think that Zeke was going to be able to get off as much. We saw Gurley not really do much against Seattle and whoever else they played the week before. It was just one of those things where, like, through 2 weeks, which I know is a whole bunch of evidence, I just didn't like what I saw, and I thought that they would game plan to take Zeke out of it, and they did. He was not only was he irrelevant, but he was actually bad.
Mm-hmm.
He was dropping wide open passes. Zeke is going to be potentially the most popular running back this week as it exists right now. People view his role as being too safe, and I think it is. I don't think Pollard entered the game at all last week in an actual snap. Maybe a couple times. I know one time they did line both of them up in the backfield. I think Zeke is going to be very, 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 very popular, especially under like 8K, 7,800. It feels like this is going to be a week people go to Zeke. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I really don't. I think there's better plays if the games happen than Zeke. We'll talk about that. But, I think Zeke is going to be the guy that absolutely gets keyed on by daily fantasy players this week. Go ahead.
No. So when you take a look at this game and you talk about game script, and we should probably be doing this on most of the games, if you see the game going, you assume Dallas is probably going to jump out to a lead and kind of how do you not play Zeke?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but Cleveland's defense is not that bad. I know that is probably a hot take because they got trounced by Baltimore, and the game with Cincinnati, they gave up a ton of points. But they finally looked good against Washington, which doesn't count. We know Dallas has some O-line issues. It's kind of – I think this could be one of those situations where people over-expect it to just be a cakewalk for the Cowboys. And if Cleveland's defense comes to play, we're just going to see a repeat of everything that we've seen over the last several weeks, where you're basically hoping that Zeke can break off long touchdown runs, because playing from behind Dak Prescott is going to result in rushing touchdowns for Dak Prescott.
Mm-hmm.
That's just his MO.
And Dallas loves to let him throw the ball. That's just what it is.
Definitely.
So when you take a look at that, any interest in Baker on the flip side coming back?
No. I'm never going to want to play fucking Baker Mayfield. He's junk.
Well, what about Odell? You got to
to
want to play Odell.
Odell has led the league in air yards, or he's been one of the top 10 in air yards 19 weeks in a row. It's just nuts. There does not seem to be any type of cohesion between them. I will still play Odell because he's extremely talented, and all it takes is 2 fucking passes, and he's made bank, because he could do a lot with that. But this is an interesting game. I'm seeing Kareem Hunt was held out with a groin injury in practice.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Nick Chubb's good, and having a full workload of Nick Chubb, and he's 7K, and people aren't playing Nick Chubb because they're playing Zeke. Talk about the tournament pivot right there. Just somehow Cleveland gets out to a lead, and that Dallas has a leaky defense, just terrible, because they've just been gashed every week this season. Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting tournament. To me, this is an interesting tournament setup where I think people might overlook one side of the football.
We talked about the amount of options. Cedric Wilson at 3,200 came out of nowhere last week. Does Dallas have too many options to pick from?
No, I think Cedric Wilson was a complete luck box situation because both Cooper and CeeDee Lamb had injuries in game. Cooper got bent in half, or he landed on his head, and basically after that point was like just running 5-yard routes and out there as a decoy. Lamb got jacked up on a kick return because that's what you should do with your better players. They couldn't have Cedric Wilson returning punts. They need to have CeeDee Lamb returning punts. And you know his role decreased dramatically. So I still think it is those three players. We have seen the Browns just hemorrhage points to tight ends in the past. So I think Dalton Schultz, who had a bad but not game last week, he didn't true sample us. I think those are your four guys. The guys I would probably look at in order would be Gallup, Schultz, Cooper, Schultz, Lamb, Gallup. That would kind of be my take for this week.
Jarvis Landry. Is it over?
I mean,
because he used to be dependable. He used to be a guy you could be like, all right, I'll plug him in at 5,500. No big deal. He's going to get 7 catches, going to get his 80 yards.
I would love to be able to sit down and look at what Jarvis Landry did last year once Kareem Hunt came back. Because I think that Hunt probably takes some of those short-range targets that Landry was just being fed to the tune of like 10 a game, and now he's seeing like half of that. And you're right, that's a crippling reduction in someone's potential output at that point. So
the game in question that we don't know about, but we expect to play is the Minnesota. Yes, it's Minnesota this time. The Houston Texans in Houston, again, a 1 o'clock kickoff. They could have made that a 4. I guess it's not probably eyeball worthy enough. Kirk Cousins is at 56, Dalvin Cook at 76, and watch Alexander Madison at 4,000 in case anything comes up with Cook during the week. Adam Thielen at 66. I'm going to talk about this guy later. I'm going to go over to the other side. Deshaun Watson at 66, David Johnson at 56, Will Fuller at 59, Brandon Cooks at 45. The tight ends, Kyle Rudolph at 33, Jordan Akins at 33. I want to start with Justin Jefferson. What do you think? I mean, I'm personally thinking I'll find somewhere else at $5,200.
Yeah, I mean he's a classic like chase spot here where a rookie emerges and just has a monster game. You know, Kirk Cousins apparently through 2 games is only viable if he's in a dome, which I don't know if Houston is or not. Maybe it is. Apparently, everyone has a dome
close
now.
It's close.
I can't keep track of these things, but it doesn't. I don't feel good about Kirk Cousins. I don't feel like this is just don't feel great about this situation. I think this is a great opportunity to chase. Now, what I will say is, let's not make any mistake about it. Dalvin Cook is the best fantasy running back on the slate every single week without Christian McCaffrey there. Mm-hmm. And people do not recognize that. People forget that before he got banged up last year, he was not right there with McCaffrey, but he was as close as someone was going to get to that pace.
It was 1-2, and then there was a bit of a space between 3.
Exactly. And he's priced in a position where he's just right under Ezekiel Elliott's price. So no one's going to play him. No one's going to play him compared to Zeke. And yeah, I think this is just another great spot. I think it's a great spot for David Johnson.
He seems underused.
I don't know. Let's just look in. He's got, he's getting he's only getting 12 or 15 touches a game. So he has to be super efficient. This is a game that sets up well, but I think it sets up better for Houston than Minnesota And I'd rather just take stabs at Dalvin Cook, maybe some Adam Thielen, and then really hope that this is a week that Watson and Fuller and Cooks can get on track.
I kind of think Justin Jefferson in season-long fantasy, great, pick him up, play him, do what you got to do. But I agree. I think this is kind of a chase spot in that sort of situation for him. Brandon Cooks, Randall, Cobb. Can you go there? 45 for Cooks, 48 for.
I mean, Cobb is probably okay. I mean, both Cooks is great for tournaments because he's got game-breaking speed. Cobb could, I think he's got a fair floor, so I don't hate that. But it's not as exciting as Will Fuller. Everybody wants to play Will Fuller. I'm not saying it sarcastically. I'm literally saying everybody wants to play Will Fuller.
People played him a week after he didn't get no catches.
Yeah, I played him last week. I had shares of Will Fuller.
4 o'clock games. Yes. And we get the New York Giants. Oh, great, thanks. Where I am, I'll be forced fed this game, which is okay with me because they're playing the Rams. And as we all know, the Rams are Brian's team. The New York Giants are just a disaster. Whatever. Daniel Jones is at 51, Devonta Freeman at 48, Dion Lewis pointless at 44, Slayton at 5, Golden Tate at 46. Let's see here. Evan Ingram is a waste of space at 44. I don't know what to say about this. Jared Goff at 67, Daryl Henderson at 58, Malcolm Brown at 47, Cooper Kupp at 67, Robert Woods still just $6,300. One of the best values in fantasy football there is, according to me. Josh Reynolds, 41, Van Jefferson at 3, Tyler Higbee at 57. Game script theory says the Rams will probably get out early and will probably hold on early, which means Daryl Henderson, Malcolm Brown. Any interest in the Rams non-running backs?
I mean,
they got to get the lead, right?
Yeah, I think you can take some shots on either Kupp or Woods. How about let's talk for a second about how last week I definitely said that Jared Goff was the one quarterback in my model that was like super low priced that really popped. And
fantastic.
Sure enough, I didn't play him. And it was intentional, right? We have 2 weeks of data. Like, I'm not going to just start making assumptions, but it was a great confirmation that like I touched on something that could be a future predictor of success. Now this week, the quarterback model is basically the 3 guys at the top and everybody else. So it's not really too helpful, being honest with you. But yeah, I think you could play some options. You could toss in some Higbee. None of these guys though like made me feel super excited about playing them.
Do you see this kind of being the Rams getting into 30, 35, maybe 40, or the Rams just kind of holding on around 20, 25 and just, blanking the Giants?
I think they can get up there, and I think it could be on the back of Daryl Henderson finally. He definitely seems to be like the guy for now until he's not, because remember 2 weeks ago we were absolutely sure it was Malcolm Brown. So look, I'm not going to go out on a limb and play Henderson in cash because the situation is way too fluid. Whereas we know at 5,700, Mike Davis is the guy in Carolina. It could easily turn. And if Cam Akers comes back, it could be Akers back. So it's just, fine. You got 4 guys that are fine for tournaments there. And then on the flip side of the ball, I mean, man, good luck. I wanted to hope that a depleted 49ers offense would give, Daniel Jones an opportunity to showcase something. It did not. This team looks like junk. They're out of weapons. It feels very much like the Jets, where sure, throw a dart at Evan Ingram or, Darius Slayton, but don't go overboard because it's very possible that these guys just don't do anything.
Let me ask you a question, because this is something that you may know the answer to. You may not, but it's fine. We see these games where, like in week 1 or in week 2, where a running back goes down, the backup running back comes in, has a decent day, and then they get the week to think about it, and that guy becomes part of nothing. Dion Lewis is the guy I'm obviously talking about this week. He did all right 2 weeks ago, coming in for Saquon. He did all right. He wasn't great. He didn't touch the ball one time. I mean, how does that happen?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
How does that happen? Yeah, I can hear you. How does that happen?
All right, one of my earbuds died. I don't know. Honestly, I don't really care enough to talk about this Giants team. with 2 games left, and apparently my AirPods deciding that they're going
right.
to leave existence.
Apparently, fine. I thought you'd be Buffalo at Vegas. The Raiders, of course, with some COVID problems with that Darren Waller shindig. Josh Allen at 73, Devin Singletary at 59, Zach Moss we'll see at 43, Stephon Diggs at 68, John Brown we'll see at 51, Cole Beasley interests me at 47, Gabe Davis at 32. If you want to go to Derek Carr, I don't know why you would, but he's 53. Josh Jacobs, who I think is not doing what we thought Josh Jacobs may do, at 68, Jalen Richard at 43, Renfro at 46, Edwards possible coming back at 33. We'll see. Zay Jones at 3. It's supposed to be Jacobs, but I don't think that he's been used right either.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens. And I normally wouldn't do something like this. And there are definitely a lot of ways it could end up going very poorly for me. But if they suspend any of these people that were at the party, it's locking the Buffalo Bills defense in, because you're going to get Nathan Peterman, who's terrible. Probably he could be the worst quarterback in the NFL. And he's playing with a depleted staff. My motto really liked Jacobs this week, which is really, again, something to note, but possibly not something I would move off of. I said at the beginning of the year, and I stick by it, whereas everyone envisioned Jacobs as being the next Dalvin Cook or anybody who's a real 3-down back. But I still feel like Jacobs is really only going to be playable in situations where you think it's a positive game script. And I don't look at this situation and feel like it's going to be a positive game script.
No.
So to me, I don't have much interest in any of these options. If Waller plays, sure. I mean, Waller is an every week guy because he could get 10 targets, but there's a ton of injury possibilities with Ruggs and Edwards. And so you're boiling it down to Renfro, which fine. I think, Renfro at that price is actually probably cash viable in the absence of the other guys, because I think he gets the looks. On the flip side of things, Cole Beasley at his price, I mean, when I was going through and doing my projections, the first thing I do is I start scrolling from the bottom and try to find the first guy who's in double digits, because that's typically where I'm okay, this is where the receiver range is going to start for me. And Cole Beasley, and I was why the hell is Cole Beasley popping? And you can't pay attention to absolutely everything that's going on. And I looked at his game log and I was yeah, at that price, that's not too shabby.
He is the guy to me that is game script of a wide receiver.
Independent.
In that I think Josh Allen doesn't necessarily look for him when it's not a crucial time, but when it's a crucial time, he's got Cole Beasley on the mind.
Oh, yeah. And that's how Prescott was, and probably Romo too, in Dallas when Beasley was there, because they know he can be relied on. You're not going down the field most times for Cole Beasley. If he somehow busts a route and it's the quarterback scrambling and everybody's just trying to get open, sure, it happens, but that's not his strength. So, the John Brown thing is definitely going to be very interesting, because we talked about Gabriel Davis last week, and he's 3,200, and he had 4 for 81 last week. I'm saying if John Brown is out in this matchup, you got to like this guy a little bit. Maybe not a cash play, probably not a cash play, but in tournaments, I'm telling you, kid's got talent. Josh Allen is on another level right now. Josh Allen projects as my top expectation for fantasy points at the position this week. So, I mean, I think I'd be willing to take some shots on Gabriel Davis if John Brown is out.
More so than Beasley?
Yeah, because they're not the same type of players. I mean,
I agree.
Cole Beasley's that possession receiver when you're trying to just chunk 10 yards down the field and move
when you
chains.
Desperately need a first down.
Gabe Davis is a guy you're looking for in the end zone and downfield.
So Buffalo, a top play on the slate for Nick. Final game, 425, America's game of the week. The New England Patriots head to Kansas City to face the machine that is Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Cam Newton at 64, the goal line back, but we saw Sony Michel, come alive last week at 46. Rex Burkhead was the touchdown machine at 48. James White, will find out about his availability at 5,200. Even J.J. Taylor got some carries last week. In fact, he may have gotten like 11 carries last week. But then you got Damien Harris as the possibility of him being involved at some point. On the flip side, you've got Mahomes at 74. You've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Is that how they say it? Helaire. Oh, like Steve Levy on Monday night, he emphasized, like it was like he was trying to prove a point. He was like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And it was just, okay, I'm not sure. Sorry. Daryl Williams at 44,000. Helaire is at 64. Tyreek at 69. Sammy is at 44. Demarcus Robinson at 39. Mecole Hardman is at 43. Julian Edelman on the flip side at 57. N'Keal Harry at 4,000. Kelsey at 68. And not worried about the tight ends there from New England. What are your thoughts? I don't think we're going to see 5 touchdowns from Patrick Mahomes in this one, but will they be overplayed?
Yeah, I mean, I think, based off the fact that Mahomes has, looked every part of the MVP and the Chiefs have looked every part of a team that's trajectory is the Super Bowl again. But these guys are all also extremely unreliable because what if Mecole Hardman has 2 touchdowns? What if Demarcus Robinson ends up having 2? What if fucking Byron Pringle gets on the field and takes an end around and ends it? So, there's a ton of ways touchdowns can be spread out. And God forbid, Clyde Edwards-Helaire actually runs one in. Now you've reduced an already potentially, expansive touchdown tree by 1. I think they're all viable options in tournaments, all of them.
Oh, sure.
I don't think I'm looking.
Nick, are you there? I can, yes. Yep. Yeah. You're good.
I've now lost my AirPods. May they rest in peace.
Last game.
Is the last game. Yeah. I think Cam Newton is my initial look as the cash game quarterback here. He's the cheapest guy who uses his legs. What about Cords?
I was just saying, cords don't die.
No, I know they don't die. It's looking cool, just hanging in your ear, making people wonder. Yeah,
is he on a serious $1 million business call?
Yeah,
I wonder.
Surely you don't have cords when you do big business.
No, you don't. I'm very poor. I have cords.
I think
my DFS, I'm not.
I feel like
my DFS play requires cords.
I feel like this game could trend more towards the Seattle New England game than the KC Baltimore game, and that's the kind of environment you want to have Cam Newton in. I don't think he's going to go under owned because he has an almost 40-point game under his belt this year already. He's the cheapest of all the quarterbacks that use their legs. And the Patriots are still a good football team. No one's saying that they're not, right? So I think that's my starting point. But, man, this is a game where outside of Cam, I don't think you can touch anyone in cash. And I think you're basically just guessing in tournaments because we've wanted it to be N'Keal Harry through 3 weeks. It hasn't been. Wasn't Bird last week after we thought maybe he might see more. And we got a 3-touchdown explosion out of Rex Burkhead. So, I mean, there's a lot of offensive weapons there, but I think in games where they're going to be tight, it's going to be Cam. Cam's going to be the determinator. So, yeah, I mean, that's the way I'm approaching it. I'm looking more towards Cam in cash. I'll play him in tournaments for sure. But, yeah, you get a little bit of savings from those other guys that are up in the 7s, and every dollar matters, and it's going to matter more and more every week moving forward.
You have to have at least some exposure to Mahomes. I mean, you just have to because you never know when those 5 touchdown games are happening. Anyone else kind of interest you in a cash or a single entry? Or you said no, so I mean. No, right?
Yeah, I mean, all these guys have viability, and it might not even be all of these guys. Like, that's something that I think people say too much. Like, if you can make a compelling argument for why someone is going to see a good amount of targets, they're eligible. It would make sense in tournaments, but like, don't try to be too cute. It almost never works out.
All right, Nick, we always ask you at this point of the show, guys that don't play in those big 150 lineups, they play single, 3-max cash games. Where are we starting our lower number of lineups?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I haven't done a ton of research yet and to see what other people are saying, so I might be on an island, but like, I feel like Mike Davis is where I'm starting because I feel like at that price, I get a reasonable floor. So I think I am probably looking at, like Mike Davis and Kenyon Drake as the start to my cash team. This is a week where I think I will likely play 3 running backs in every lineup. I don't know if Zeke is going to be the guy I go with. I might, if the game plays, I might go Cook over Zeke. I think that I honestly think that Cook has a higher upside, and I think they have a relatively similar floor. So if you're going to do that, why wouldn't you just play the guy who has the higher upside? I don't quite understand that. I think tight end is a really, really, really interesting situation because I don't have any faith in like the top guys, and all of the cheap guys have enough going against them that there's not like one that's just right there that makes you say, yes, this is the guy. And I already forget who we were talking about, but I kind of liked someone in like that 4,200 range or something. Oh, it was Dalton Schultz.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's probably the route. The other guy I liked, if Deontay Johnson wasn't going to play, was going to be Eric Ebron, but that game's postponed, so that sucks. So
and no Zach Ertz on the slate to not have to deal with Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, so like in general, that's probably the route that I would go with that. Nothing makes me feel like extremely comfortable. That's not good. I'm sure we're going to get things that change coming into Sunday, especially with this Raiders situation. Sure. So if their suspension's levied, it could open up some potential opportunity. But yeah, I think I'm really just looking to get as many touches as I can at running back and playing cheap at wide receiver, and then just trying to see what quarterback best allows me to maximize what I feel like my wide receiver production is going to be.
We will let him get his AirPods all charged up for week 5 as long as COVID allows us to have a week 5. I think we're okay with that. He is at Nick from CWE. Nick, thanks so much. I am Bryan at HU Golf Guy. This is the Eat the Chalk podcast, your week 4 first look, brought to you by the DFS headquarters, your one-stop shop for all your DFS needs, every sport from football to baseball to basketball to hockey to all the minor sports, including UFC and golf, which is what I do, NASCAR, which is what Nick does, and college football as well is thrown in there, and some other stuff too. We do it all. Hit us up, like, subscribe to this podcast. We're going to start giving away some memberships. We're going to start giving away some cool things, some cool insights into what we do. So you got to like us, subscribe. You got to make some comments, 5-star reviews, that sort of thing. That's what's going to get you the ability to join us at the DFS headquarters and see what we do on both our website and our Discord. Nick, thanks so much. Until week 5, may your screens be green. Take care.